Hello class and welcome to the plotting forms, basic forms in your perspective grid drawing demo. Now I'm going to take my ruler and find one of these vertical lines on the grid. Again, use the grid that you've plotted out. It's very helpful. And I draw down that line on down to the bottom corner of the floor there. I'm going to project over from the left corner of this floor plane over, I don't know, about a handful of those blocks, handful of those squares over there. And that gives me the width of my sort of bench or couch thing that I'm going to make. I go back to the top of that first line, that vertical line I drew, and I draw, about a half inch over to the right. Make sure that line is parallel to the bottom bar of the page, level. Make sure those lines are level. Make sure these horizontal lines are always level, okay? Or else your forms are going to look wonky. Again, that's another vertical line signifying that vertical edge of the couch there. Another horizontal line that signifies the top edge of that front plane of the sort of couch thing that I'm going to draw. Now you need to take this front corner back to the vanishing point. You see that line going back to the vanishing point from that front top corner? Then I'm going to take that front and bottom corner there on back to the vanishing point, and that gives me that vertical edge to the couch there. I'm going to take this front top right corner of this top plane, and I'm going to project that back to the vanishing point. And now I'm going to follow this orthogonal line that's already on my grid there on back to the vanishing point as well, and that gives me roughly what that top plane of the box couch will be doing back there. And right now I'm just arbitrarily picking how deep I want my couch to go, and again this also needs to be a horizontal line, a level line, and I just draw straight down, straight up and down as vertical as possible with that back edge back there. Right now I'm just trying to figure out where I want the top back horizontal edge of my couch to be. And I end up drawing this too wide in just a second. Later on I'll go back and fix that. Right now it looks okay, but I actually adjust that later on. But this is still a good start to this little couch thing. I'm trying to find my back vertical there. And I'm testing the placement of this very front corner there of the couch and making sure it goes back into perspective. And right now what I just showed you there is that line needs to drop straight down to that diagonal that I just drew previously to that. And so I'm drawing my back edge over to that corner there, over to that diagonal that I drew and made darker just a second ago. Now later on I'm gonna go straight up from that point to the top edge of that couch. And now I'm going to show you how to draw a window. Okay, I go up to about 2 blocks or 3 blocks down from the top corner of the ceiling there, and I draw straight down again using the vertical that's provided by my grid there to about 6 or so boxes up from the bottom floor. And now you see me mark in that diagonal signifying the top edge of the window. Again, it follows that orthogonal that is already there thanks to the perspective grid. Do the same thing for the bottom edge of the window down here. And both of those edges are going back into perspective to the vanishing point there. And it's already given us a nice illusion of depth. Now I'm drawing the front vertical edge of that window. Again, just from the top point to the bottom point, follow the vertical line that's already there because of your perspective grid. And everything looks nice and level. Now we're going to think about the light coming in from the window on the right wall there, coming in through the window. It's going to go across the space, and as I mentioned in the light and shadow and basic forms demo video, light always travels in a straight line. So you can use your ruler, like I'm doing here, to project from the bottom left edge of that window, touching the corner of the couch, and I projected out that shadow. And now I'm doing the same thing with the top edge of the window here. I know that the shadow is going to touch that back edge to the back top edge to the couch there, so that's going to get projected onto the wall. Right now I'm seeing what this front corner of the shadow might do. Um, so then I have this idea of trying that sort of angled shadow up there, but I don't really like the way that looks, so I end up just projecting the shadow all the way off the wall, and I think it ends up looking fine. And so we're just trying to get a general sense of light with these drawings. With all of your forms that you put into your space, you're going to need to project some form of a light source, right? So objects are going to have cast shadows. I'll talk about the sort of physics again of the cast shadow. Again, right now I'm drawing in the cast shadow. I'm just kind of blocking in a mid-tone with a 2B graphite pencil. I'm still using only graphite pencils at this point in the drawing, but later on, if you want to use charcoal pencils, that's totally fine for very dark values. Again, that's kind of like a mid-tone gray that I just blocked in there. Remember our value scales, always refer back to that when you're thinking about value. Again, I'm blocking in a mid-tone value just to kind of give my brain a starting point. Also for you, I recommend, once you know where you want your shadow shapes and your actual physical forms that you draw, once you know where they're going to be placed, to, if you're feeling comfortable with it, erase out some of those grid lines because they do kind of show up later on. And now I'm using my 6B Lomograph pencil. And as you can tell, I'm darkening in a bunch of these tones here. And that goes back to what I mentioned in the light and shadow and basic form drawing demo, that the shadows get darker as they approach the object, and usually the edges are darker and sharper. The edges of the cast shadow are darker and sharper as they approach the object as well. You can see that in the drawing right now. Notice how the edge of the shadow gets darker and sharper as it approaches the object that casts it. And I'm just continuing to block in these dark tones to represent that passage of light. Again, the shadow becomes darker as it approaches the object that casts it. Sometimes there's some reflected light within the body of the shadow too that you can kind of play around with. But remember that the edges of the shadow, the very edges of the shadow shape, are darker and sharper as they approach the object casting it. And now I'm continuing to just shore up all of these dark tones here, giving the shadow some nice structure to it, a good believability to it. It's kind of nice how that dark shape brings the eye off of the canvas, off of the frame there. Now I'm going to approach the shadow side of the couch thingy that I'm drawing here. And I start pretty dark blocking with the way I block this in. You could approach this with a more of a mid-tone value across the face of the couch there. Remember the tensioned edge idea. Remember how I talk about the tensioned edge in the light and shadow on basic forms demo video with the rectangular cuboid? This is essentially a rectangular cuboid with a couple different sides. So the tensioned edge idea is going to apply to it, right? So the corner all the way up and then all the way over of the shadow family is going to be darker than the rest of that shadow shape there. As you can tell, the edge is much darker than the rest of it, and that's because of that tensioned edge phenomena idea. And I realized that I made this plane of the couch here just one flat dark, and it just doesn't it shouldn't be like that because there's going to be some reflected light coming out of the shadow that's being cast onto the wall there that's going to bounce into this shadow plane of the couch here. So I went back in and erased out some of those reflected tones, and then I worked back into the tensioned edge idea. So now the edge of that shadow family all the way up and then all the way over is really nice and sharp and dark. And that's, again, that tensioned edge phenomena, on display there. So you need to make sure you do that, especially with all of your sort of rectangular cuboid-esque type shapes in your drawing here. What I'm doing right now is erasing out some of these grid lines. I get them out a little bit more in a second with my Staedtler Mars eraser right here. I like to use the blue side sometimes. And what I'm going to do is just quickly draw in some cushions to this little sofa here. Give them a nice little curve to feel like they're kind of pillow shaped, I guess. A little bit of shadow play here. Since the window is above and to the right on that wall over there, the top planes of these cushions are going to be receiving a lot of light, okay? So there's going to be not much shadow across them. And now I'm just working on some shadow play here. Again, the top planes of these pillows or these cushions or whatever are going to receive a lot of light, but everywhere I think it might curve downward away from the light, it's going to have a little bit of shadow there. And now I'm drawing in that vertical edge to the back there because, as I said earlier, I kind of plotted it in the wrong spot, but I needed to make sure I started that vertical line in the corner where the pillow meets the back wall plane there of the couch, and I changed my back vertical edge, my back horizontal edge to the couch there as well. Now I'm erasing out that initial sort of mistake that I made earlier. And as you can probably tell, the structure of the couch makes a little bit more sense for sure. I'm just shoring up this diagonal here by making it a little bit darker. Cleaning up the corners a little bit there. But yeah, so the overall structure of that, you know, back wall section of that couch makes a lot more sense now. Also, I think I made the back wall of this couch a little tall, but, I'm just trying to show you the basic steps for this. You can play with all that stuff on your own with your own drawings. Now I'm counting all these different blocks because I'm trying to find roughly where the midpoint is vertically of this edge here so I can find where I want the crossbar for my window to be. So make sure that goes back in perspective to the vanishing point. Get two different edges to that bar, and I'm just going to fill it in with my pencil here so you can see it a little bit better. Pretend that it's made of some type of dark wood or something. And now I'm doing the same thing. I'm counting all of my little points across this bottom edge to find roughly where I think the middle of that bottom edge is going to be so I can draw vertically straight up, again using my perspective grid to guide the verticality of my ruler. I'm going to do this twice to make two lines just like the previous time and fill that in as well to give us a little cross section for this window there. And right now I'm drawing a windowsill. I'm drawing from that front corner of the window over to the left, again as level as I can. And I decided I want to draw it out a little bit more just because that's what I felt about it. And now I'm going to take this front corner of the windowsill and project that on back to the vanishing point. And I decide to stop that angle whenever I think that it lines up with the very back corner of the wall of the window back there because I know that's where it's going to stop, eventually. And now I'm obviously just clearing up a bunch of erasers. My ruler, the cork backing to my ruler ends up putting a bunch of smudges of graphite all over the paper, so I end up erasing those out a lot. Drawing this corner back again, just trying to make sure that I drew the line back far enough so that I can draw again left to right as level as possible to create that back edge to the windowsill. As you can see, it's projecting out from the wall now. I'm going to draw down a little bit to give this windowsill some body instead of leaving it as like a flat, skinny plane that doesn't really make any sense. I'm giving it some structure now. So there's that front edge to it, and now with this bottom front corner here, I'm going to take that back to the vanishing point as well. And there's our little windowsill. It's pretty simple. If you want to do something more interesting or more complex, feel free. Do whatever designs you want. Now I'm blocking in the shadow families to this windowsill. Remember, the light's coming from above through that window, so it's going to hit the top plane of the windowsill, but this side plane here that I'm marking in, that other side plane, are going to pick up shadow. And I'm blocking in the tensioned edge idea. As you can see, that top edge to the shadow family side is darker than the rest of that shadow family, and that side vertical edge to the shadow family side is a little bit darker than the rest of the body of that shadow family shape. And I'm going back in, getting rid of my smudges. Again, that's very important. Just get your smudges out of the way before you make too many detailed moments within your drawing, and it won't be all that much of a hassle if you get it all done early on in the process. And now I'm drawing in just kind of like a light, it's kind of like a fluorescent light structure at the top here, using my orthogonals thanks to my perspective grid. Now you can see that shape up there. It's a nice little rectangle. And yeah, that's just a really simple little structure. I just wanted to show you what it might look like if you make, an elongated rectangle on the top ceiling plane of the perspective grid. Continuing to clean up the presentation of the drawing, getting out all the smudges that my ruler's leaving behind. And I apologize for this being almost out of the frame, but I'm just adding like a little side plane to that light structure up there. You know how from the sides sometimes fluorescent lights have those like metal sides to them that kind of hold it in place and protect it. That's kind of what that is. And now I'm just arbitrarily drawing a couple curved edges to signify maybe the start of another light going away from the viewer. And I try to do that about the midpoint or so, and it looks like maybe I didn't quite draw it far enough down, but it still looks okay. In just a second, I'll be drawing in some of the shadow play for this vertical plane to the couch there. Again, referring back in my mind to the light and shadow and basic forms demo video. I'm blocking in sort of like a mid-tone, slightly lighter mid-tone, and then I'm blocking in right now the tensioned edge at the top of this shape. Remember how for this side that receives light, the tensioned edge will get a little bit darker as that plane of the structure approaches the light family side on the very top of the object. And again, I went back in with my kneaded eraser to erase out some light tones to signify how that tensioned edge gets a little bit lighter as the edge approaches the dark shadow family on the dark side of the object there. And now I'm going to add some very subtle shadow tones here to imply that maybe that back edge is a little bit darker than the front edges there of this light family here, because I do want to communicate that tensioned edge idea. Remember how in the light family edge of the rectangular cuboid, so whatever edge of the rectangular cuboid is receiving the most light, the edges that approach the other two darker sides is where a little bit more light is going to sort of illuminate those edges of the shape. And it really helps to sell the form and give the form some nice volume to it. And I believe now I'm just sort of reiterating these orthogonals again, just to kind of remind you. Obviously, when you work on your project, I want these orthogonals to be erased out so that I can't see them. But I'm just doing this to kind of help you out and remind you where these edges of these forms are going back into perspective space here. Remember, this front bottom corner goes back to the vanishing point, as well as this front top corner here goes back to the vanishing point. And basically I just spent some time cleaning up the smudge marks on my paper here. I'm going to skip forward. And now I'm just going to reiterate this orthogonal again, just to kind of give you a reminder. Again, these orthogonals need to be the ones that project off of the forms going back to the vanishing point, need to be erased out in your final drawing. Refer to the student image in the handout for this project. It's been posted to the week 6 module. That's where you can find the handout. And now I'll just continue to clean up the drawing a little bit more. And now I just reiterate that orthogonal one last time. And so basically this is what the drawing ends up looking like by the time I finish this demo video here. In just a second I will post some still shots, still frame images of the drawing itself. And here's an image of the couch type structure going back into perspective to the vanishing point. Again, like I said, all of the orthogonals that project off of your form back to the vanishing point, those lines need to be erased out in the final drawing. And so here's a good example of the light and shadow structure that I would like for you to, sort of, you don't have to emulate this exact direction of light and shadow. This is all based on where I set up that window over to the right wall. Since the light is coming in from the right over to the left, that's why there's that angle there coming from the couch at that specific angle there. And again, you can really see the tensioned edge idea with the dark edge to the shadow family there. That phenomenon happens with all rectangular cuboid structures. And so I based this couch off of something similar to a rectangular cuboid. And so since it has those sharp edges to it, the tensioned edge idea needs to be articulated. And now we will switch over to another image. And here's the example of the window on the right wall. You can see that example of the orthogonal going back from that back corner of the windowsill on back to the vanishing point in perspective space. Again, that orthogonal should be erased out in the final version of your drawing. And with this window, you can see that I used my perspective grid, basically to create the whole thing. Just follow your angles on back to the vanishing point and follow your vertical lines that you feel comfortable with. And you're going to create something that looks pretty pretty symmetrical and vertical and sturdy. And here is the image of what I ended up with by the end of the drawing video. So I would like for you to put more objects than this into your perspective room or perspective hallway, however you want to think about it. Um, I was trying to come up with something that was kind of basic for y'all to show you the process for doing this. Just remember that you got to start with extremely basic geometry with these forms. Again, that couch can be sort of thought of as you know it's basically predicated on the concepts of how a rectangular cuboid would work in perspective space. So think about what you've learned in terms of perspective to figure this out, and also refer back to the week 5 module for that other artist's article that covers this very same process of plotting subjects and objects into your perspective spaces here. And yeah, make sure you get all of those extraneous lines out of the way before you turn your final version of your drawing in. Again, refer to the student drawing in the Project 3 handout that I have posted in the week 6 module for a really great example of that. It's a very, very clean drawing, and as you can tell, none of her forms have the orthogonals projecting off of them. That's all erased out very well. So use that as an example to follow. And right, so that basically concludes this video, and thank you very much.